Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Sangeeta to Teach. Today in this video we are going to cover the important sections that are related to code on wages. So we have already covered a brief introduction to the code on wages which is given in the description link. You can watch it if you have missed it, and this is going to be very important because it includes the important sections which would be very relevant to your exam point of view. So please concentrate, and this is going to be part 1. We all know that Code on Wages is having 9 chapters, and we are going to discuss the important sections particularly related to chapter 1 in this particular video. So let's discuss what are these chapters, what are these 9 chapters, and we'll go to the sections related to these chapters. So the first chapter is the preliminary, which consists of important definitions that are defined in this particular code. So the whole chapter 1 is having the definitions. Chapter 2 talks about the minimum wages. The minimum wages will relate to the minimum rate. Who is going to fix this minimum wage? How it is going to be fixed? Who has the power? What are the components that are taken into consideration while fixing a minimum wage? These are all considered in this particular chapter 2, minimum wages. Coming to the next chapter, that is chapter 3, it talks about the payment of wages, where we talk about the mode of payment, the wage period, the time limit of paying the wages, and also what kind of deductions can be done in this wages is being described in this chapter 3, that is payment of wages. Coming to chapter 4, it is talking about the payment of bonus. Who is eligible for the bonus? What is this allocable or the available surplus? What kind of deductions can be done in your particular bonus? And what is the time limit of bonus and who are applicable for this bonus is being described in this particular chapter 4, that is payment of bonus. Coming to chapter 5, that is advisory board. So in this advisory board we talk about the central advisory board and the state advisory board, and this advisory board comes under the section 42, which is also important. So this particular advisory board will discuss about what kind of proportion, the proportion of members that are required, and it will talk about the state and the central boards. And the next chapter is payment of dues and claims and audits. So this is going to talk about to whom you're going to appeal if there is some due, or some kind of claims that you have to get if there is some dues. So this is going to be chapter 6, that is payment of dues, claims and audit. Chapter 7 will talk about the inspector cum facilitator, which is something new that has been brought into the wage code. The term inspector cum facilitator will deal with chapter 7 under the section 51. So this section 51 is very important because it is the recent change. So inspector cum facilitator will fall under the section 51 under the chapter 7. And the chapter 8 will talk about the offenses and the penalties. So what kind of penalties are imposed, how much is it is imposed. These are all under this chapter 8, offenses and penalties. Coming to chapter 9, it will talk about the miscellaneous. So we understood that the chapter 1 is talking about the definitions, and as I said you, the chapter 5 advisory board is 42. Section 42 deals with advisory board. These two are important: advisory board section 42 and inspector cum facilitator section 51. So these two are important. You have to remember this and make a note of it. Right. Next, let's move to the important sections that are related to chapter 1. In this video, we are going to dedicate ourselves in reading the chapter 1 and its important sections. In chapter 2, the next video will be related to that. Right. Okay. Important sections particularly to the chapter 1 are the section 2a will deal with the accounting year. We will read in detail about this in the next coming slides. For now, take the screenshot of this so that it would be easy for you. There might be a direct question. For example, section 2 of E is related to company. So you might have getting this direct question. So please make a note of this. So section 2A is going to deal with accounting year. Accounting year starts from April 1st. Okay. Section 2 of B is the advisory board. B for board. So it is advisory board. Section 2 of D is dealing with the appropriate government. Section 2 of E is company. Section 2 of F is contractor. This is very important because the definition of contractor is being included in the employer. So this may be asked. So it is important. Section 2 of F is contractor. Section 2 of G is contract labor. Section 2 of K is employee. 2 of L is employer. And 2 of M is establishment. Coming to the next set, it is section 2 of N is factory. Before factory was 2 of M, but now it is 2 of N. Okay, factory is 2 of N. Please remember because there is a change in this. Okay, section 2 of Q is industrial dispute. 2 of R is inspector cum facilitator, which is under the section 51. This is very important because this is the new term that has been included, right? Inspector cum facilitator, it is under the section 51. It is defined in the section 2 of R. Section 2 of S talks about the minimum wage. Section 2 of V is talking about the same work or the similarity of work, similar nature kind of work. And coming to the definition of wage, it is defined in section 2 of Y. Section 2 of Z defines worker. Section 3 is prohibition of discrimination on the ground of gender. Section 4, if there is any dispute, the decision is with regard to the same nature of the work is decided by the appropriate government. So this is defined under this particular section 4. So these sections are very important. These can be a direct question. Don't ignore them. Please make a note and revise it every day so that it would be easy for you. So this is very important. And now let's look in detail what is defined in this particular sections. So we'll start with the accounting year, that is section 2 of A. The accounting year means the year that is starting from 1st of April. Coming to the next definition, that is advisory board. As I said, your advisory board can be the central advisory board or the state advisory board, and this has been constituted under the section 42. So section 42 is dealing with the advisory board. In the coming next videos, we will look in detail about this advisory board, right? Coming to the appropriate government. So what is the definition of this appropriate government? Previously, we know that the central government would deal with the railways, mines, oil fields and major ports. But now we have air transport services, telecommunication, banking and insurance companies, and also the corporations will also fall under the central government. Got the point? Previously it was only mines, railways, oil and fields, etc. But now it is also including air transport, telecommunication, banking and insurance companies are also under the central government. Okay. So it defines that an establishment carried or under the authority of central government, or the establishment of railways, mines, oil fields, major ports, air transport services, telecommunication, banking and insurance companies or corporation or other authorities established by central act or central public sector undertaken or subsidiary companies. So it can be the subsidiary companies. These can be the undertaken by autonomous bodies or owned or controlled by the central government. These all come under the central government. So whenever you see this railways, mines, oil fields, air transport, telecommunication, banking and insurance companies, they all fall under the central government. Other than that will fall under the state government. Coming to the definition of contractor, that is section 2 of F. So contractor is a person who undertakes to produce a given result for the establishment. So he is going to just produce the result that is being allotted to him. He is not going to do any supply of goods and articles. He is going to supply the contract labor, that's it. He is going to supply the contract labor for any work of establishment, and it also includes subcontractor. There was a definition asked, which of the following does not include any contractor? So contractor includes a person who is a subcontractor and he supplies the contract labor for the work, and he does not, this is the main important point, he does not get involved in supplying of goods and services. He is going to supply only the labor and not the goods and supply articles. Okay, you have to remember this, it can be asked. And section 2 of G defines the contract labor. So it means a worker who shall be deemed to be employed in or in connection with the work of an establishment where he is hired in and in connection with the work. So it can be with the knowledge or without the knowledge of the principal employer. And he also includes the interstate migrant worker. So contracted labor can be a person who has been employed in connection, having the knowledge or without the knowledge of the principal employer, and he can be the interstate migrant worker also, but he does not include any other person who is regularly employed, that is regularly employed by contractor in any activity. And if he is getting periodically some increments, social security coverages or welfare benefits, then he is not he doesn't fall under the contract labor. So you have to remember, contract labor can be with or without the knowledge of the principal employer, and he includes the interstate migrant worker also, but he does not include any regular worker who is working for full time or so, or in the permanent basis, or someone who is receiving some social security coverage, or who is receiving periodical incentives, are not considered as a contract labor, right? And now in this particular slide we are going to talk about who is an employee and who is a worker. This slide will give you a clear clarity about who is an employee and who is a worker. So employee will deal with section 2 of K, whereas worker will deal with section 2 of Z. So employee is a person, any person who is other than apprentice, engaged under the Apprentice Act 1961. So it can be any work, employee can be a skilled employee, semi-skilled, unskilled, or manual, or supervisory. The main difference between an employee and a worker is a person who is engaged in managerial or administrative works will come under employee. Remember these terms, managerial and administrative will fall under employee, whereas the worker is going to have a definition of a person other than apprentice defined under the Apprentice Act 1961. He can do the work manually, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical, and supervisory work. Here, the major difference between an employee and a worker is that an employee is involved in managerial and administrative work, whereas worker is dealing with just other than these, the manual, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical, and supervisory work. So, who is not included as an employee? A person who is not included is Armed Forces of Union. So, this is all about the employee. Whereas worker. Now the worker definition has been changed when it has come to the Code on Wages. The new Code on Wages talks about the workers who are working in journalism, journalist of working journalist and other newspaper employees under 1955, and sales promotion employees of the sales promotion employees condition 1976 also fall under the term workers. So the definition of worker has been changed. So the person who is other than apprentice and who is dealing with manual, unskilled, skilled, technical, clerical, and supervisory work, and who is also working as a journalist or a sales promotion employees are considered as workers. And who is not included as any such person is that a person who is working in Air Force is not considered as a worker, and who is employed in police service is not considered as a worker, and who is having a managerial administrative work is not considered as a worker. and who is employed in a supervisory capacity drawing more than 15,000. More than 15,000, greater than 15,000 is not a worker. So now you understood who is a worker and who is an employee. The major difference that you have to remember is that managerial and administrative will fall under the word employee, whereas workers does not involve air force, police service, or managerial or administrative, and person who is earning more than 15,000 under the supervisory, right? And they also include journalists and sales promotions of the employees. This is the major difference between an employee and a worker. Coming to the word or a definition of employer. Employer, the definition has been modified now. The section 2 of L is dealing with the definition. Employer means a person who employs, whether directly or through any person or behalf of someone else. It can be in a central government or a state government, or if there is no authority, it would be headed by the local authority. The chief executive of that authority may include the occupier, whoever the person is occupying that particular factory. The occupier or the head of the factory, that is the manager of the factory, will be the authority. And in relation to other establishment, whoever is having the ultimate control over the affairs of the establishment, it can be the managing director or it can be the entrusted manager, whoever it is, they are going to be considered as an employer. And now the new definition also includes contractor as an employer and also a legal representative of the deceased employer. So whoever is the head, if he dies, the legal representative of that particular head is going to become the employer. So the employer is none other than the occupier of the factory. He can be the manager of the factory, he can be the person who is having the ultimate control over the affairs, and he can be the managing director or anyone else. And it also includes the contractor, it also includes the legal representative of the deceased employer. Coming to the definition of 2 of M, section 2 of M, it talks about an establishment. So establishment can be any industry, a trade, business, manufacture, or an occupation that is carried out on or includes the government establishment. So establishment is nothing but it can be a trade, industry, manufacture, or an occupation carried out. Coming to the section 2 of R, which is very important, it deals with the section 51. It is none other than inspector cum facilitator. So this person is appointed by the appropriate government. Section 2 of S is going to deal with the minimum wage. So here the wage code, we know that the minimum wage is very important. So minimum wage is defined under the section 2 of S. So this is under the section 6 as well. Okay, means the wage fixed under the section 6. So minimum wage is defined under section 2 of S. So coming to the definition of section 2 of Q, that is industrial dispute. So what can be a dispute? It can a dispute or a difference, it can be between an employer and an employer. It can be an employer and a worker. It can be between a worker and a worker. Based on what? It is based on the employment or a non-employment terms. It can be a dispute between an individual worker or an employer connected with issues like discharge, dismiss, retrenchment, and termination of such worker. So dispute can be between an employer and a worker and an worker, and an employer and a worker as well. It can be based on the employment or a non-employment conditions, or it can be between an individual or a employer that are connected with the issues like discharge, dismissal, retrenchment, or termination of worker. So the next important definition is that section 2 of Y. Section 2 of Y talks about wages. So what is wage, what includes in wage, what does not include in wage is given in this particular slide. So it is very important that you know what includes in wage. The basic pay, diurnal allowance, and retaining allowance are included in wage. So what is included? The basic wage, the earnings allowance, and the retaining allowance. Other than that, whatever comes is not included in wage. A simple uh, thing that you can remember for yourself is the basic wage, the earners allowance, and the retaining allowance are allowed in the wage. Whereas other than that, it can be any bonus, any house accommodation, or any contribution that has to be paid by the employer, or any conveyance or traveling allowances, house rent allowances, overtime allowances, commission payable, gratitude payable, retrenchment compensation that is payable. These all does not fall under the wage. So it does not include in the wage. So only the three things are included in wage, that are basic wage, the earnings allowances, and the retaining allowance. Right? Coming to the section 3. Section 3 will talk about the prohibition of discrimination on the ground of gender. So we know that the code on wages is a combination of the payment of minimum wages, payment of bonus, and also the Equal Remuneration Act. So section 3 particularly figures out about the remuneration or equal remuneration. It will talk about there is no discrimination based on the gender. So there shall be no discrimination in an establishment or an unit thereof among the employees on the ground of gender in matter relating to wages by an same employer. So for same work they have to pay the same kind of wage. So no employer shall not try to reduce the rate of the wage of an employee, or he should not show any kind of discrimination while recruiting for the same work or the same similar nature of the condition of the employment, except where the employment of women in such work is prohibited or restricted. Other than that, they have no right to discriminate among the gender. So section 3 talks about the prohibition of discrimination on grounds of gender. Coming to section 4, it talks about decision as to dispute with regard to similar or the same nature of work. So if there is some dispute regarding the similar nature of work, who is going to take the decision? The decision or the authority is in the hands of the appropriate government. So these are all the important sections that are related to chapter 1. You can revise them, make a note of them. So these can be direct questions as well. For example, if according to which section the definition of wage is given, it is section 2 of 5. So you have to remember, these are very very important. Please revise it as many times as you can, so that it is in your mind. So this is very important, you cannot leave them. So it acts to be a scoring part as well, if you remember it. And in the next video we will talk about other important sections related to this particular code on wages. It can be from the chapter 2. This is going to be series of videos particularly on code on wages, where we are going to see the important sections related to this code on wages. So thanks for watching, and please do like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.